quickly jumping into the conversation and not wasting your time anymore this evening, I'm going to come directly to you, Harish. So I did give a quick intro of equity, equality, and all that. But I'm wondering, and I have heard this many times, why equity? Why not equality? Isn't it about fairness and equality and same treatment for everybody?
There cannot be the same treatment for everybody simply because everyone doesn't start at the same level. So you're judging people from the finishing line, but you don't know where they have started their journey. Like the journey of a transgender man who also happens to be disabled, also happens to be a person with disability, also happens to be a person from a challenged economic class, will not be the same as a person able-bodied person from able-bodied man from a city. So there is difference, and you can think about equality is basically saying same treatment for everybody. Equity is saying that is basically seeing people and understanding that there are a few people who have been deprived of rights, that there's no level playing field for them, and to create that field first before you actually start the whole process. So I think creating that level playing field is what is equity, and because judgments can come after that. You can evaluate people after that. When everyone has not started from the same level, you can't judge people from the finishing line.
True, very well said. The finishing line is not the benchmark. The starting point is the benchmark, really. Any other perspective anybody wants to add?
I think adding to what Harish just mentioned, that we all don't start from the same point. And coming from the hospitality industry, how we at the Lalit Hospitality Group started is like when we started this journey of being inclusive. So we realized that we'll not always find the right match basis our requirements, because we haven't created that sort of an ecosystem where everybody has that access to education, access to other facilities. So we were not equal, and we were not able to even provide that platform for everybody to access. So in order to do that, we started first analyzing what we need to do as an organization. And we did our research to understand how are we able to bridge all of those gaps. So we started skill enhancement trainings. So instead of reaching out to people and saying that, okay, it's good that you're wanting to, but you do not have the right skill, we took that as an onus on us to create right fits for ourselves. And I think this is where you will be at a platform where you will create that leveling field for each one of us. And this is, I think, one of the great things which we could do to actually being more inclusive. And I think in our journey of being diverse, equitable, and inclusive, collaboration is very important. Because for us, it is very difficult always, because we don't come from the same background. So we surely need to put a lot of effort to understand the other people at the other side of the table. And to get in there, you can only do it best when you have other support systems with you who could help you to reach there. So I think that's my take on this.
See, there are many laudable policies which the corporates come up with, but finally everybody down the line has to implement them. And if we say that I need inclusiveness, I need diversity, but then these are the parameters within which I'm going to have candidates who will fit into my roles, that doesn't work. We have to have enablers. We have to have some support systems. So equity is an important concept. It goes hand in hand. We can't have things in exclusion. And that's
Great, great. Thank you for adding that. And that just on the point of policies. In fact, in Schneider, many years back, we decided to do away with policy as a one-size-fits-all. And it's like a basket of things that you have, and you can pick and choose and decide, basis your unique context and the starting point that you've had. I'm going to continue the conversation around what organizations are doing, and Ekta, come to you to say, so how do organizations traverse this journey from equality to equity, or let's say from diversity to inclusion?
Absolutely. I think both are equally important. And I think it's critical to move from the diversity to inclusion conversation. I've heard quite a lot of panelists today be speaking here, share some metrics, etc. So at AGS Health, we have 50% of our workforce are women. And we're very proud of that. it's a conscious choice. We've gone beyond masking the resumes, the name and the college you come from, we're way beyond that. What we now do is every job that is open, we make sure to say you have to give same number of profiles. If you're giving 5 men, give 5 women. That's gender, right? That's where we say. Inclusion is the next step of it. Very consciously, we've started separate exclusive batches. We've hired 20 people from LGBTQIA plus community. And we've also hired 20 PWD, and this is just last quarter I'm talking about, right? It wasn't an easy journey to begin. It takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of conviction, a lot of commitment, not just from the HR community, right? It takes commitment from the leadership. And AGS, our CEO is, Patrice Wolf is a woman, so naturally that changes the dialogue. Many will say that. But even prior to her coming, the company exclusively looked at. What some of the changes you're asking? I think I'll tell you what we are driving and what changes I have brought in. I think number one is at performance management. If you say a certain grade, pick entry level. If you say 50% is men, 50 is women, or if you say 30% is women, then make sure that your top rated 1 and 2 or whatever is your outstanding, excellent performance is also equivalent to that. Yeah, it's correlated. Make sure that your promotions also are in the same manner, right? We have created this year, and my team is here, they'll keep me honest, 140 people internally grown, developed, groomed to become leaders of tomorrow. We've not gone and hired from outside. It's all internally grown, right? So that's something we are very, very proud of. All of this is still a dialogue of gender. Come on, now let's talk about inclusion. How do you do? We've done multiple workshops to sensitize our leaders, starting at our leaders, but of course employees as well. What do you do? Small changes like our washroom signs, it can start there. It's a small change, but it can start there, right? Not just for making sure all genders are welcome, but also to make sure that if we have visually impaired people coming, can they do it? In fact, I personally experienced, I went through an accident, I couldn't walk for a few days, then I was walking with a stick. I realized the significance of ramps, the inclusive environment, right? There were many places I went and said, guys, I can't walk, I cannot take the steps. Somebody is helping me. The next day I see the organization saying, okay, we need a ramp here. So changes of that nature is something is very important, I think, to change the dialogue of moving from diversity. It's high time and start talking inclusion.
Well, so what I'm picking from you is not only gender, but to have more inclusion in inclusion itself, to be sensitive about the unique needs that individuals have,
Absolutely.
and to not leave it as an HR agenda, to have more business participation.
Absolutely. I don't think it should be an HR agenda at all. I mean, while most organizations, it sits with HR, I think the dialogue has to start at leaders. And we in this room can change that conversation.
Any other perspective?
I agree with what Ekta says, right? It's not about, and you know, we have a cliche of saying diversity is always about gender. We never tend to think anything beyond gender to be diversity, right? I represent Nonsurety, which is a startup, not a big company like when compared to what you guys are doing. We're 200 people, right? And for us, inclusivity was more than gender. Obviously, diversity and inclusivity is much more than gender, but we had a lot of people who love their pets, right? Can I get my pet? Because my pet is going to be alone at home, right? During COVID, the pet is being used to having someone with it. So can I bring my pet? And we said, yes, please bring in. And the productivity and the happiness quotient of an employee actually really goes up, right? Yes, there would be the other side of the table where people say, but you know what? And I think that's the mindset change that one needs to bring in. And that can happen only through the culture. And I think while it's not necessarily always top down, it's always good to lead the way though.
Yeah. To have role models, to set the examples. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So then Ritu, coming to you, okay, organizations are doing a whole lot of stuff, and I'm sure you've also experienced, but what are some of the challenges that you foresee in this journey?
I think starting equality. But he said that the starting point is not final, it is not the same. And one of the biggest challenges is from that perspective itself. When I say so, what I mean is that there's a gray area which is communities. Now there is that green area.
Yeah.
So what do people do? They rush that way. To rush that way, what do? We take steps like recruitment and increase the number, prevention is increase the number, have every whatever you call management of every day happy. But you can do deeper. What are we doing? We are actually serving equality. After really going deeper to equity, since we don't go deeper to equity, it doesn't really automatically translate into inclusion. Now, what are the challenges? Why organizations prefer to go to the rush and not go to the equity and taking more inclusive steps towards? It's simple that it is long term. It takes time. And just give you an example from the industry where I spent last more than a decade now. The IT. Typical, challenge IT has is that when you go to hiring, you have at least 30 to 40, sometimes even 45% people who you hire from the other gender, which means men and women equal. Suddenly, if you go to any company, study the data. The moment it reaches the mid management, there is an evaluation which happens.
True.
Now the question is, why did the step on right? Why did the evaluation happen? Evaluation happened because I was dealing with equality and non-equity. So I had to think about the challenges about bringing these people to the inclusive state, their life stages, the enablement, what is the ecosystem providing them.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest challenge the organizations face. And my humble request to everyone who's so happy here is that look it at more deeply. It's not an activity which is to be accomplished. We have to think from fundamentals. And when we say fundamentals, it takes time to get the results, but eventually it gets the results. And just to give you one last perspective, if I look again at my industry, IT, one of the biggest challenges where we are seeing a huge scarcity of talent is UI and UX designers. Why? Because they need to have it. And now most of the engineers who come from the set colleges are men. Now they come with a product mindset, legal mindset. So actually the industry is always struggling because if you take care of equity back then, and you have an inclusive workforce. So I think ability of the organizations
not to go with the rush, go to the fundamentals, cater equity, inclusion will happen, equality will also eventually come.
I think you make a good point about the business case for equity as well. One of the challenges that I have encountered and really open to all the panelists is when you are focusing so much on one specific underrepresented group, let's say women, for example, there are a whole lot of men in the organization who are feeling sidelined, who are feeling, oh, I don't have opportunity for growth, I don't have opportunity for development and all that. Yeah. Is that a challenge that you've encountered? And if yes, how do you manage this?
I just want to add a point here, the bias is so strong. We have to accept it in society, in homes, in corporates.
True.
It's so strong when you try to, you have to give an enablement to the one, which is not, I won't use the word deprived, but who is still lagging behind in terms of the numbers. So when you even do that, the first reaction is, oh, she got it because she was female.
Yeah.
Oh, she got it because they are considering her, they have to make their numbers. Now, even someone says this in a lighter note, it talks about the deep patriarchy and it talks about the deep bias they have.
True.
I think what is important is look for the people who are actually living or who are the change agents within the organization. Encourage them. And when you encourage them, it becomes a norm. And so, eventually these derailers, go to the sides.
Okay. So identify allies and reward
Yeah, absolutely.
them. Okay.
I just like to add to what you said. I think it's very important for us to recognize that our corporations, the companies are a subset of society at large. So the same things, same evils that exist in society will exist within the organization. No organization is holier than thou or holier than cow. Okay, so the same things would exist with it. So that's why it becomes extremely important for us to recognize the same patriarchy that runs outside will run over here. The same challenges that exist outside, patriarchy, misogyny, all of them will run over here. And obviously, equality is basically, I've seen many people say, we don't do any, we
Special.
don't do any discrimination. We give the same job to the man and same job to the woman. But no, they didn't start from the same line.
True.
I'll tell you an example. We started a campaign. Ekta was just reminding me of that. So we started a campaign called Homemakers, giving jobs to homemakers, because we thought that that was a talent pool that was underrepresented. People were not focusing on that talent pool at all. So we decided that for homemakers, we will this thing. So all the news articles that came were all about housewives. Okay. I said homemaker because of course it's going to be more women and lesser number of men, but we kept it agnostic. But everyone's mind said it's housewife. They didn't think, first of all, housewife itself is an offensive word, but everyone thought that it was housewife. Every newspaper that initially carried the article said housewife. We have to go back and we had to correct those. So I think these all are ingrained this thing. And for men who complain, they just need more training. And we don't, they don't start from the same line. And yes, sometimes women would need that extra this thing, and there should be no shame in admitting that. No shame in admitting that.
I agree. In fact, I think just an additional point to that is that corporations now also need to do efforts to influence society, because again, we are hiring from society, we are operating in society. And I have in mind an example where my team, we go to schools and we go to usually children in the class of 5 to 8, and we try to bring and educate them about the concept of inclusion and equity through some games and some fun activities. And then those students and those children are the one who become sort of our, let's say, mouthpiece, for want of a better word, and they start talking about it in their home environments and all that. During COVID times, we did it online, and I had some sessions where even parents joined or neighbors joined, and somebody had a house help join and all of that. So I think those are the small activities, if each one of us is able to do, that will also bring about some shift in society. But yeah, I agree, it's a long road ahead.
Absolutely. I do want to take 30 seconds and add, since you said children, in my daughter's school, I'm confident it is in every kid's school. I just say my daughter. In her school, they said drawing competition. Tell us what your mother and father do, but you can't tell, you have to draw. Now, what does my daughter draw? She draws me with a trolley bag, with my suitcase and an aeroplane in the background. And her teacher takes the picture and sends it to me, and she says, by the way, Ekta, this is what Amogha is drawing for you. And I said, way to go, because that's exactly me. I am rarely at home. I'm always traveling somewhere or the other. But absolutely, I think until we break the stereotypes, we are not going to move forward in conversation.
True. It's deep conditioning, and it will take some additional efforts. And by the way, underrepresented groups will continue to need some extra support, and there's nothing to be ashamed of that. I'm going to just extend this point a little forward and come to you, Dinesh, as to one is that the role the organizations play. But within the organization, and I remember you talked about it a bit, what is the role that you see leaders playing in this equity effort?
I feel the leaders play a significant role, right? While they're not the only ones who really build culture in an organization, but they play a significant role by how they lead, right? How they treat their team members, how they conduct a meeting, and so on and so forth. But most of the times, I feel many of the leaders tend to have a lot of blind spots, right? And a couple of them are, the first thing in my mind which comes is listening versus hearing, right? None of them all want to hear, but not to listen, right? And then learn from what's being spoken in a meeting, or what's the view that the other party in your meeting has, right? Reflect upon does it make sense of what's been spoken, introspect to see, okay, does this need a change, right? And if it needs a change, examine as to how can I do it in my organization? And then take that first step. The first step is not lip service, which is the most common one, right? It's about really going and doing something. If it's a process, if it's a tool, whatever it is, but just going ahead and doing it and leading the way. I think lip service has always been great, and that's what leaders tend to do many times. It's a blind spot. I think that needs to move, right? the culture of owning it and making it a part of everybody's DNA is extremely important. Like we earlier said, it's not HR's job, right? The other day I was telling someone in my company, while we have an HR team, the first line of HR is the manager.
Yes.
Right? So don't think that it's, the HR team's job to give the right good news, bad news, speak about the policy. It's for all of us, right? We are one organization. So I think leaders do play a significant role and they need to take it seriously.
I just want to add to that, when you look at organizations, they are like the way societies, communities or homes. The culture of the organization is basically created by the collective behavior of the people there.
Yep.
There are some behaviors which are influencers, not because they are in the hierarchy, because their impact is higher. You have a business head, you have a CEO, CFO, whatever. Now, their behavior has a larger impact. And imagine if there are derailers in their behaviors towards D&I. What will happen? That will create a larger impact. So even though they may not say it as rightly mentioned, lip service, but a behavior, okay, why should I hire her? It will be an impediment to the business, right? Simple statements like these. But imagine the deep impact it has. Ripple effect from the mid-management to the bottom with a simple line, yahan to ye nahi chalega. Correct? Yeah. So I think that becomes very important. So do they believe in it? And if their belief has to come within the organization, these behaviors which have a larger impact in the organization have to be truthful and with the good intent.
Yeah.
You were saying?
Yes. I think he very rightly mentioned that I would like to present it as a case from the Lalit Hospitality Group. I think when it comes to diversity, equity and inclusion, our management, because of 50% representation of women at the corporate level and including Mr. Kesha Suri, who is our executive director. So when the change flows from top down, it do a lot better than actually just doing it for the sake of doing it. And especially since it always comes from, the drive comes from the top management. We are part of the Valuable 500 commitment. And if you walk out of this panel after this, you will get to see pianist out there playing in the lobby who is a person with visual disability. And similarly, we have people from different spectrum of disability working in all of our hotels. Similarly, the kind of effort that we put in to not just provide opportunities, but to also create people to fetch those opportunities and to claim those spaces is something which works really more better when it flows from top down, because now we take that onus of saying that we are proud organization who just not have employees but an army of allies, because that is something which we have to have within each one of us, the sense of belongingness, the sense of connectivity to work not for people but work with the people. Yeah. And I think that sense of connection can only come up when you collaborate, go out there in the public and work on ground and understand the realities, and then come onto those forums to say, okay, this is how we are doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll come to you in a moment, Ekta. Just a show of hands, how many of you in this room are not from HR?
Sorry? Not from HR.
Not from HR. Okay, great. It's good to see non-HR people participating in this conversation, and I'm hoping that this tribe will increase for sure. And with that, Ekta, to you.
Yeah, so I think I'll share some practical examples of what we can do. In business, I'm confident all of us do monthly reviews, right? We look at how we're doing in terms of revenue, how we're doing in terms of sales, how we're doing in terms of D&I. Are we bringing that to the first slide, not the fifth, not the last, not just before thank you, right? What's my diversity metrics? What's my inclusion metrics? What can leaders do? Ask. Very clearly say, this is what my ask from you is as leaders, and that will change the dialogue. That's what we've done at our organization. That's how we're growing. The second I do want to share is, yes, there will be a certain set of people that will always be underrepresented, and today I think that probably is gender and women. So at AGS Health, we've made a conscious conversation of saying, what do? We call that initiative Launchpad. So we train the women who are ready to take leadership positions in whether they raise their hand or they don't. We identify and we say, hey, I think you will make a good leader. Come join this program, and tomorrow we train them, and therefore when the promotion comes, we put them forward. So we have ready-made pipeline. We're not wondering, like you had mentioned, yeah, people do drop off, milestones in our life. Women tend to be the ones that sacrifice. Last but not the least, this is my favorite. I always talk about it. In India, how do we measure IQ? Anybody? In India, how do we measure IQ? Anybody wants to respond?
How do we measure IQ?
IQ. Yes? No, how do you measure it? In India, is there an assessment that is taken? Aptitude test, do we do that in India? No. So it's end up being what? Mark sheets?
Mark sheets.
Right? Now, how many of you here in the room, women only can respond, and then we'll come to the men also, I promise you. How many of the women in the room have more marks in the last examination you've taken, whether it's your, grad or post-grad, than your spouse? How many? You see? How many of you have made compromises in life though? How many of you have said, I am exactly my point? So when I ask this question, if you are more intelligent than your spouse, then why are you the one not having the negotiation conversation? You should be having the negotiation conversation. That's where the dialogue should start, from you, not from others. Let's stop expecting things from others and start negotiating with you.
Thank you for that perspective. I'm sure it was very useful. And just to add a couple of points, I would say sponsorship is also very crucial. True. You do need sponsorship. And when I say sponsorship, it's not only for women. For sure, I can talk as a woman, the sponsorship that I need, and that has worked for me in my life. But any underrepresented group, because again, the starting point is different, you do need sponsorship, and that's where leaders can again play a very, very crucial role. In Schneider, we have tied up leaders' variable pay to the diversity metrics. Wow. So their variable pay gets impacted if they do not fulfill some of the diversity matrices, and every senior leader sponsoring at least one person from underrepresented group is one of the metrics. Wow. So they have to fulfill that, otherwise part of their variable pay is gone. And wonderful. When it comes to money matters, for sure, it makes an impact. Well, I think we started talking about already the last question that I had in mind, which is about what concretely are some of the things that will make an impact in this journey, and I'd like to start with you. So what do you think is one thing that you think if some people in this room, including us, will do, it will make an impact?
See, when we speak of equity, and we have so many diverse groups which need
to be... You may have to hold it closer.
Yeah, when we speak of equity, and we have so many groups which have been historically excluded, you say just one silver bullet, it doesn't really address the matter. But of course, if it was an idealistic or a utopian situation, I would have said, just accept. Accept that I am different from you, you are different from me. Let's work together. Maybe over a period of time, we understand that underneath we are not all that different. We start, the next stage is understanding. But of course, the world is not like that. If it was, maybe we wouldn't have had the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and we wouldn't have had the Chris Rock and Will Smith incident also. So if you come down to brass tacks, what's happening in the workplace, there are quite a few things to be done, and because you have so many stakeholders, you have the corporate, you have the employees who have to watch special incentives being given to somebody. I can speak about myself. When I joined, I was constantly told that you have been given an appointment because you're a woman. There is some percentage that has to be filled. That's why you have been given this thing. So my response was, okay, let my work speak. I don't want to engage into any altercation. Then there are people who are to be included. We have different categories. Then amongst the groups which need to be included, at what milestone of the journey are they in? When we say inclusive, if we start 70 or 80 years ago, the first group that used to come to mind was women. Yeah. So when they started working, of course, we had women house helps, agriculture, everybody worked in those fields, but formal jobs where they were paid and where they use their intellect, that is where people really started looking at women as employable. When I joined the bank, I had senior lady officers who used to say that there weren't even basic facilities like the door of the toilet which closed properly. So from that stage to now, where we have creches, we have feeding rooms, we have special incentives for ladies who have taken a break, we have come a long way. So if you look at that inclusive milestone, we are a little ahead. After that, we have people with physical disabilities. We have people who have suffered various types of violence, wars, domestic violence. Now we have LGBTQ. Everyone is at a different milestone. So you need different measures. We can't have one single step which we say will address everything. But if I had to this thing, I would have said accept people as they are. It's very simplistic, but that's the most important.
And probably the most difficult one too, to accept and celebrate the differences that each one of us have, even in this room. We are as unique as each individual in this room. Yes. What are the other tips? Yes, Akshay.
Okay, so I think I'll have two more steps before I reach to acceptance. I'll first go to recognition, because to recognize is very important. I think it's time now that we should be celebrating the differences instead of shying away saying people with disabilities. I think it's time now we don't sugarcoat it saying especially abled or differently abled. I think let's put it as it is, people with disabilities. When it comes to LGBTQIA plus community, say it as it is, and I think that is something which is very important, and that can only happen when you actually put in those thoughts in everybody's mind at what are the differences, and to help them recognize, because that will do a lot better to reach to acceptance. Because like we are asking people to include, but who to include, what are the challenges people had faced in their lives, and what, because we all come from different walks of life, and to create that leveling field, we need to tell everybody why that support system is required.
True.
Then only you will reach out to the platform where you say that, okay, now we have an understanding. And understanding would be the second stage, where you go out to these civil society organizations, these non-profit organizations, community-based organizations, to understand the challenges people are coming from, and to understand the role which you as a leader can play in their lives, and the role which they can play in your lives. And third would be acceptance, because once you have that idea, okay, this is the community, these are the needs, and this is my role to play, then only your acceptance of them will do something, right? So this would be the third, and fourth would be the act, because I think it takes a lot to prepare ourselves, and I don't want anybody to start at a point where they have no idea on what are the problems people are facing, and then start doing something differently, and then people feel like they're excluded because you did not get to recognize them or you did not understand them well. So it's good to take time to prepare ourselves before actually doing it, and these 3 steps will help you actually prepare your strategies to reach a particular point. And then only your actions will speak for you and do wonders.
Yeah.
So I think that's
so there is the blueprint for everybody to follow.
I just want to add a point here. You know, one of the thoughts which was crossing my mind while I was listening to him is that it is not a charity that you want to have diversity and inclusion, first of all. So it is, if you look at the world today, you know, if last 2.5, 3 years, few skills which have become very critical for the organizations, dealing with ambiguity, resilience, agility. And if you look at, you know, women possess this more naturally. If you look at the governments who handle this crisis well, they were led by women. So if we really want the world to be better and really create a value for the overall communities, it is very important. So I think the one key action from all of us would be, it is needed more than ever, and for the betterment of the business, which you may not be thinking today, but which will eventually happen. So operating from that seat of strength is going to really make a difference, rather than operating from a weak, seat of weakness or lacking something, because actually that is not the case.
I have a thing to share. I think the onus of inclusion lies on those who are included, not on those who are excluded. So do not expect people who are different to come and then work towards getting included in the group. It is your duty. It is the duty of the majority to ensure that the numbers which are underrepresented, it is our duty to ensure that those people get a voice and they get a choice. And sometimes the pathways are not very difficult. Many a times you'll see differences even between us, how we look at the binary. We look at everything from a binary. What is needed in our HR policies? All that you have to do is remove his and her and make them they. Control F and then make it they. That's all that is needed. That will make it inclusive of everybody. Okay, instead of them, make it theirs. Make it his and her, make it theirs. That is all that is needed. That's all that we did in Axis Bank as well. In all our policies, we just tried to shift he and him and her. We riffed everything and we changed it into they. Also, many a times in our practices, many a times when we refer to our customer, by default, the customer becomes a man without us realizing, right? We don't think about the customer as a woman unless it's Hema, Jaya, Rekha, or Sushma, Sabki Pasand, Nirma. Unless it's that, you don't think of the customer as a woman. Okay, so I think that it's important for us at every stage of our life to be cognizant of the words that come out of our mouth. Speak diligently, understand that you could be one word of exclusion would mean a lot for that person. Understand, keep your ear on ground, as Akshay said. Understand, take things from the top, and do not shy away from being inclusive and being loud about it. Look at what the Lalit Suri group has done. I mean, Keshav I've spoken to, they have a they just don't have a visually challenged, visually impaired pianist. They have front end facing staff who are acid attack survivors. And when you speak to Keshav, the head of the institution, and you ask him, he would actually tell you, nahi aate business to nahi aane. You know, what is, and that's the thing that is needed. You know, take the step. If you lose business in the long run, you will gain more people. Exactly. Take that step. You don't need to understand everything to do the right thing. You need to do the right thing so that you can understand it.
Very well said, very well said. In fact, my latest example, in the last 3 years or so, a lot of policies we've evolved in the organization, and we've done crowdsourcing to evolve the policies rather than, you know, some of us in HR or finance sitting and saying, okay, give this benefit, give that benefit. We did a crowdsourcing, and today I have a team of about 50 odd people who are framing policies. And to your point about replacing the names that we use, the pronouns that we use, we said, why do we call it paternity policy? Why not a secondary parent? There's a primary parent and a secondary parent.
We call it birthing parent and partner of birthing parent.
Okay, okay. So even in adoption and surrogacy situations, you have a primary parent and a secondary parent who could be of any gender whatsoever. Absolutely. So that was my learning from this group actually that we've had. Ekta, you were saying something?
So I think from my, I'm more action. Most of you must have realized that by now. So I'm going to say call for action. Each one of us, I guess, should pledge today that we will take one person who's not like us, who thinks differently, behaves differently, acts differently. It can start as simple as that. If not gender, if not LGBTQIA community, anybody that's different than you, mentor one person. You'll learn acceptance will come to you naturally if you mentor, and you'll learn so much, you'll feel so enriched. I can tell you from my personal experience, that will take you long ways. That's my one tip.
Great.
Just to add to Ekta, this is something that really happened with me. I joined Axis Bank, and the first day that because I bought myself a nice sexy pink suit, and I reached Axis Bank, and I thought I was looking pretty hot at that. And I walked into the office, and the head HR, Rajkamal Vempati, called me to the room. And she was like, why are you dressed like this? So I thought, okay, mera fly khula hai kya? Or have I stained my coat or something? So I was looking here and there. Why are you dressed like this? And she said, I have looked at your photographs. You are not here to fit in. Stand out. Be yourself. And challenge everyone. Challenge everyone to think differently. dress differently, come and, so I said, but I have the privilege of working with you, that's why I'm able to do this. What about the others? I said, तुमको किस लिए hire किया? Change the policy. So we upgraded our dress code policy. So we have also added a dress code for gender variant people.
There you go. Wonderful, way to go.
Dinesh, anything from you?
Yeah, while I agree to all what you guys said, I think there's one step before. I know we spoke more to the corporate part, but what we touched upon earlier is the society, right? I think educating the schools are important.
Yeah.
Even before that, the teachers are important.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Because the teachers influence tomorrow's economy in some sort.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's extremely important that the teachers, and we can sit in Bombay and speak about this brilliantly well, but I think it's important to just look across the country. Look, how are we getting to the teachers there and then to the students there, the children, and then how are we, changing the society, and then the corporate. I think
Excellent.
that's important as well.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Very well said. So great. I learned a lot, and I'm
Yeah.
sure all of us did. Thank you very much for your attention to the topic today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Likewise.